Welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. I'm Scott, and joining me is our go-to leadership guru, the magnificent, the marvelous Dr. Michael David Morales, known to many as Mo.
Man, I love that new intro. Let's do it, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of my all-time favorite stories. And so I don't know if you know, actually, you have to know who Richard Branson is, head of Virgin America, but also just kind of a genius. But his journey overall is kind of a really classic tale of resilience, where kind of taking risks and kind of facing failure and then refusing to give up are really keys overall to his success. So one of his more notable setbacks that I don't think a lot of people really know about, but it came in 1994, and he tried to launch Virgin Cola. It was to challenge Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Which, if you know anything about Coca-Cola and Pepsi, you know anything about the subsidiaries that they own and just how big those companies are. It was one of those things where I was like, man, you were swinging to left field. Like, there was no way that you were going to be able to do that. But really, that's ultimately what happened. So really kind of despite he had this really bold ambition and really great and creative marketing, obviously the product didn't catch on. And Virgin Cola was eventually discontinued. So if you can find it, I would try it. But overall, I think a lot of people, especially this time of year, they usually let those failures define them. But Branson ended up really embracing it as part of his really larger journey. And he quickly kind of brushed himself off, picked himself up, and returned to what he did best, which was taking risks and pushing boundaries. So he shifted his focus to other ventures like Virgin Atlantic Airways, and then went on to develop a Virgin Galactic, which is, a space tourism company, essentially. So overall, Virgin Cola was definitely a flop, but it really wasn't the end of Branson's story. It was just another lesson along the way. And today, the Virgin Group is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate and spans multiple industries from music to telecommunications to space exploration. But for Branson, really, failure was never final. Not hitting those goals for him was never final. It was fuel kind of for that reinvention and just served as a spark for his next idea. And so his story is just an incredible reminder, especially this time of year, especially with this kind of continuation episode that we're doing today. But overall, that setbacks don't define us, and they just kind of pave that way for future success. And so, I say that because, we're continuing to talk about goals today, and some people are probably crushing their goals. I really hope everybody is, but maybe there are some people who are struggling, and then there are some who maybe haven't even started yet. But overall, kind of wherever you're at, this is the episode for you. So we're going to break it down into 3 segments today, with each one focusing kind of on what you need to stay on track and achieve your goals for kind of the year. So Mo, let's go ahead and jump straight into the first segment for today.
When you talked about Branson, he owns several Guinness Book of World Records. He pushes the limit and boundaries, and he's all about travel, obviously, Virgin Air. And the fun fact that I always remember about him is he was a millionaire at 23 years old. So I'm about half a lifetime behind. So other than that, thanks for killing the vibe with me crushing my goals. Reminding me of one of my goals that I did not achieve when I was 23 years old, which has become a millionaire. So hopefully we can make that happen half a lifetime later. Only 3% of Americans write down their goals. If you don't write down your goals, they're just dreams. That's why I'm saying hang in there. I've been seeing a commercial on the past couple weeks talking about the second Friday in January, known as Quitter's Day. As the guy in the commercial says, look it up. So I'm going to. And it really inspired me because I do write down my goals. Scotty, I write down everything. I've been writing things down even before I was a teenager. I love journaling. There was just something about it. I knew it was therapeutic. I knew I needed it. And I still do it today. And so if you are not crushing it, hang in there. Here we go. Point number 1 is this. To hang in there, you need to reflect and reassess. The 2 R's. Reflect on the obstacles that are common to you. If you want to lose a couple of pounds, you want to lose a couple of lbs, there's going to be some obstacles. And those obstacles for me are those Lay's potato chips sitting in my pantry, staring at me in the face, and I won't get rid of them because, just in case everything else in the house runs out. That's an obstacle. I need to get rid of that obstacle, and now I feel really guilty, and I really should throw them away right after this episode, but to be continued, Scotty. You can ask me and keep me accountable on that. So what are some common obstacles that we all face? Lack of time, unclear priorities, unexpected challenges. You have to figure those out so you can write those down under each of your goals. So figure out those obstacles. The second thing is this. You need to understand what is relevant. Again, one of my favorite books is Atomic Habits. The author, James Clear, says there's different changes around you. The environment changes. There's distractions that come. You have to do everything you can to reduce obstacles. If you don't actively do that, it's not going to happen. You can't just wish it away. And let me give you an example. Oprah Winfrey is one of my favorite success stories. She became a multi-billionaire and was successful. I remember growing up, everybody listened to Oprah Winfrey, and she overcame a lot of early career setbacks. But what she did is she identified what was holding her back, and then she took actionable steps to address them.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like that's something that people just don't often do. It's so easy to say, I want to do this, and that's it. That's all that goes into it. That's the only thought process that goes into the planning or whatever, but there's so much that goes into that. You know, it's one of saying, I'm just not going to eat Lay's potato chips. How are you going to go about doing that? Are you not going to buy them? Are you not going to keep them in your house? Are you going to only eat them socially? Like,
yes.
You know, those types of things that I just feel like people don't often look at. And then when you hit that obstacle, you hit that bump, it's easy to quit. You know, I think one great example for me, you know, my wife is a big runner, big run, like ultra marathons, like she is a runner. I dabble, so to say, but it is so easy for me living in a colder climate, especially this time of year, to be, oh man, what did I just tell you? The real feel is out 3. And so it's, it's so easy to be like, man, that's an obstacle. But also I know that's going to happen every single year. It always gets cold. That's going to always be an obstacle for me when it comes to being outside, to running outside. So looking at that, identifying it early and knowing what I need to do to adjust it.
There's a second part to reflecting and reassessing. And Scott, you really hit it, which is we have to be able to adjust our goals if necessary. If it's snowing outside and you can't go for a run, you're going to have to adjust. What does that mean for you? There are studies that say don't miss more than a day. So what happens when it's snowing on the road and you want to get out and you want to run? Does that mean that you have to do some cycling or calisthenics in the garage? I don't know, but you have to be able to adjust your goals. Flexibility is a trait of resilient leaders. I want to be resilient for my team. In the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, Chris Gardner adjusts his goals repeatedly because he has to navigate homelessness and taking care of his kid and being able to work when he doesn't have the right clothes or the right means. If he can make the adjustments, then I can make the adjustments. So reassess and refine your goals as needed.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, kind of leading into our next point here, that we, you kind of already mentioned Atomic Habits, but how do you go about that? What are you going to do to ensure that? And I think Atomic Habits is a great stepping stone into that. It's one of my wife's favorite books, so go figure. But it's also, it stresses building habits and just how important that is. And that kind of swings us into our second point for today of just about building habits and how that contributes so much to goals.
Point 2, build habits, not just goals, is important. You have to learn to be consistent. Brian Tracy says, get up and do something every day that's going to get you closer to your goals, even if it's something small, even if it's something tiny. Consistency is about showing up when the motivation fades. The great Nick Saban of Alabama football, Roll Tide, says that everybody wants to be the beast, but nobody wants to do what the beasts do. You have to do it when you don't want to do it. You have to do it especially when you don't want to do it, because momentum builds through regular intentional action.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about being consistent. So, huge Jocko Willink fan, but this time of year, he always does. It's a challenge. It's called Discipline Equals Freedom. But one of my favorite things or quotes that he has, and I think it's from his good kind of segment, but he says, pick yourself up, dust off, recalibrate, reload, and get after it. And so it just speaks so much volumes to the idea of building habits, kind of sticking with those goals of like, okay, yeah, it sucks, but you got to put good habits in place to be able to stay on track with those goals. And when those habits don't work out, then you got to shift those habits back or dumb them down, for lack of a better term.
Jocko Willink is phenomenal at this. I think, and if you think of Jocko, the guy is a beast. He does want to be the beast, and he does do what the beast has to do, right?
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite comedians, if not my favorite comedian of all time, and I think it's probably the greatest comedian, at least of my lifetime, is Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld had, and maybe he still does, and it would be interesting to know because he's kind of in the, not necessarily the twilight of his career, but he is not a young man anymore. But when he was a young man, if you get a chance to read any of his books, he has this saying called, "Don't break the chain." And this was a method where he became famous for, because this approach to consistency is very difficult, especially for comedians, because he marked off every day that he wrote jokes on the calendar. And what he focused on was streaks. How long can I get this streak? So what is it for you? Are you sitting in a cubicle and you're crunching numbers and you need to get your reports done? How many days in a row can you get these in on time? If you are exercising, what's the longest streak that you can do? If you're trying to eat right, how many days can you go without simple carbs? What are the things that you can focus on? We can all focus on something.
I think one of the most important things, and I tell the individuals that I work with all the time, it's so crucial to track your progress, because even something that seems insignificant is progress itself. And so, when you're talking about, you've coached swim for years, and right, like, shaving, 1/10 off of your race time, not a big deal, but that 1/10 could decide a win or lose.
People like Michael Phelps, he was great in the water, but he attributed a lot of his success about how he was consistent outside of the water, outside of the actual practice, the daily routines that he had. He would track his progress. We need to track our progress, because if you don't know where you were, you don't know where you're going. It gives you tangible proof. Where am I in this progress? Am I reinforcing the commitment? Am I building motivation?
One of the big things too, if we're kind of talking about, how do we stay that way? And it's one of my favorite words, accountability, right? And, it's bringing us into this segment 3 for today, but accountability is just so incredibly important, especially when it comes to things like motivation. And I feel like that's such a big thing with people, is like, man, I'm just not motivated enough to do this. I'm not motivated to continue with this. Like, it's hard to keep a goal for a whole year. Heck, it's hard for most people to keep a set of goals for the first 14 days in January.
Point 3, stay motivated and accountable. Scott's favorite word. That might be his word for the year. Start with yourself. Stay motivated. Stay accountable. You got to be accountable to yourself, because at the end of the day, when you're all alone and your head hits the pillow, all the other people that are helping you, they're not there. It's just you. Wherever you are in your goals, whether you're listening to this at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year, or somewhere else in between, always revisit your why. If you don't know what to do, revisit your why. The why, as Simon Sinek calls it, acts as a compass. It gives you clarity. It gives you purpose, because the motivation is going to wane. Determination has to do with doing the things you don't want to do when you have to do them. And so in Start With Why, Simon Sinek emphasizes the importance of knowing your purpose, because knowing your purpose inspires action. Do you know your purpose? An example of one of my favorite athletes of all time, Serena Williams. She always cites her father's encouragement to keep her family's legacy alive as her why for pushing through the challenges. And if Serena Williams can do it, you can do it. There's no secret. We can all do it. And so are you doing those things? Are you being the kind of person that revisits your purpose, revisits the why when you need to?
Yeah. I think people really get the idea of motivated confused with excitement.
Yes.
And, especially right now, like, it's a new year, right? So it's, I'm going to set these goals. I'm going to get after it. I'm going to do all this, I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. every morning like Jocko does. And you're excited. And so it makes it a lot easier to do those things. And it's not that the motivation starts to wane. It's the excitement that starts to wane. You got to find your motivation from somewhere other than excitement. And it's almost like at the same time, as you motivate yourself more and more, we know that as you abstain from something or you try something new, it becomes that habit. It becomes second nature. So it just becomes something you do, and you kind of shift almost from that motivation, and you kind of shift from that excitement to that motivation to discipline.
The way that you do that is you bring other people into the process. You got to stay accountable. Scott talks about that. He likes it. I'm glad because
Love it.
most people don't like that word accountability because it means that I'm going to have to talk to somebody and let them know whether I made it or I failed. But believe me, a lot of times when you talk about your failures, that's motivation enough. So find somebody at work that knows what you're doing at work. If you're on the softball field on Thursday night, somebody that is the same age as you and has kids your age, and you're trying to be a better father, you're trying to be a better mom, bring that person in. You need to talk to people. You need to let them in and add them to the accountability process in your life.
We could talk about accountability all night. Absolutely love accountability. Do you have anything else for us today to close out?
I talk about goals a lot. I'm a go-getter. I like to just move forward. I want to check out the boxes. I want to check off the list. I want to get to the next thing. And you might be like that. You might not be like that. Wherever you are, if you are a huge task person, or if you're I don't like tasks, I don't like goals, I don't like any of this stuff, just remember this. When it comes to goals, when it comes to being the kind of person that is going to make these changes in your life, remember, always reward yourself. Rewards help sustain the motivation. Scott was talking about motivation, and sometimes motivation wanes, but associate progress with positive reinforcement because it makes you want to do it more. And so there's a book by Mel Robbins. It's called The 5-Second Rule. And what Mel says in that is the small rewards can break the inertia and create lasting habits. Are you creating lasting habits? And I'll leave our listeners with this fun story today about one of both of our favorite authors, Scotty, even though you've read all of her stuff and I've read none of her stuff, J.K. Rowling. Did you know that when she finished writing a chapter of Harry Potter, she would always treat herself to a nice dinner because she used those rewards to sustain her creativity over the long haul? The little things, that's what matters.
That is quite a few dinners. Some of those books are really thick.
And it's worth every one of them. Every dollar she spent on those steaks or whatever she bought and thought, I really shouldn't be spending this money. I'm broke and I'm poor. I think we're all glad that she did. She's such an inspiring story.
We just want to thank you guys for tuning in today, but don't ever think it's too late to start. So don't ever think that, I missed January 1st. I'll just wait until next December. You can go ahead, start whenever you want. If you have no idea where to start, go ahead and reach out to us. So you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok as well, but also our website, rtclc.com. Connect with us. Please rate, review, subscribe. Until next time, make sure you lead with purpose and stay authentic.